cannot allow this area of the world to fall back into the hands of those people who are at liberty to plan and plot as they wish against you and me and everyone in the free world.
But there is a glimmer of hope. Look, Afghanistan, we all talk about Afghanistan and Pakistan, but don't forget, Afghanistan and Iran, the Persian culture, we've had thousands of years of, you know, having the same culture. So, and Iran is very important in that region.
Well, some of the great Iranian poets were born and lived in what is now Afghanistan.
We speak the same language. We have the same type of, you know, the culture, but the same type of emotions and spiritual, you know, expressions. So, in effect, Afghanistan should not be looked at in isolation. Yes, Westerners can pull out the troops from Afghanistan, but at the same time there has to be a void, there will be a void, and it has to be filled. And this, Iran is there, and what is happening in Iran right now, and the democratic Iran, of course, will be, I think,
but
will
it's
be
not in Iran's interest to have an unstable Afghanistan either, is it?
Not at all. But if Iran is run in a democratic, in a liberty way that, you know, the people of it aspire to be, there won't be any problem in Afghanistan.
Well, just to play devil's advocate with one point, when Gordon Brown was saying, let me tell you what success is, it's basically the Afghans doing it for themselves, which means building up the Afghan army, which some people think is actually going quite well, given the circumstances. But I wonder how, if the basis of his speech wasn't still, as generals are supposed to do, fighting the last war, if we don't do this, the Taliban will come back and there will be other attacks on us. What is really the evidence of that? I mean, where is the evidence that the Taliban would sweep back into power in Afghanistan if there weren't British and American
troops? The evidence, I suppose, is in little pockets of the country where there has been less of a NATO troop presence. The Taliban are coming back and fielding their forces, beginning to close schools, going back into all their old ways of denying human rights to the women, to children, to girls in particular. And that is, if that happens on a small scale in the areas where NATO troops are not sufficiently well deployed, you can imagine how it will re-emerge on the larger scale. I think Brown on that score is quite credible. We do have evidence. We know that the Taliban are not the sort of most human rights loving people on earth.
And certainly the Pakistan government has more than woken up to that fact. But how big a problem is this for Obama? It's the same problem for Obama as Brown, and in fact it's the same for all the opposition leaders in Britain. However much they say they would do it slightly differently, they're all behind the same kind of
It's less of a problem for Obama right now than it is for Brown right now. But things are moving very fast in the United States, and you go back to July and the poll figures are totally different than what they are now in terms of how many Americans think it's a mistake and how many do not.
Okay, let's move on, because despite some signs of growth